Why is shame such a powerful emotion? How does it affect us mentally, physically, emotionally? I'm Nadia Davis. I'm a mom, author, attorney, and Kundalini yoga teacher who has experienced public shaming that brought me to my knees. On this podcast, I'm going to tell you how I'm living the work taking shame out of the shadows. I'll give you real-life advice and skills to take away with you throughout your day. You'll hear from powerful guests who have overcome trauma and emerged stronger than ever. You too can ban the shame within and around you. Join me. You are not alone. Hi, everyone. You have Nadia and Dr. Steve back here, and I'm really excited because this partnership has resulted in such a beautiful thing that is taking shame out of the shadows in relationships. And it all starts with one individual and their shame, and then another individual and their shame. One individual in their own healing and self-awareness, self-acceptance, and then another individual with their healing, self-awareness, self-acceptance. And so the fodder that you're getting in these conversations is the result of a man and a woman who have each done a ton of work and do it every day on a daily basis. And the things that we will be sharing here are layered. They're personal and they're somewhat professional. They're absolutely professional on Dr. Steve's end. So you get it all here, okay? We are doing a follow-up conversation today on red flags in relationships, how to spot them, and I encourage you to check out the episode that is titled exactly that, Red Flags, How to Spot Them. Now, what do we mean by red flags? Dr. Steve.
Okay, red flags, Nadia. There's a saying, the lure of the familiar is seductive. Many red flags feel familiar to us. That's why we drive past them. Oh, I know that. But that red flag, because it's familiar, doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good. And that, Nadia, is simple. That's the bottom line. We're familiar with this. Like, let's say a woman's dating a guy who's very narcissistic. She grew up in that home. That's very familiar to her.
I see.
So that's the primary cause.
The general thing we're going to cover. Okay.
Familiar.
Now, the red flags, folks, in a nutshell, and tell me if I'm missing one, was the blaming.
Correct.
Lack of taking responsibility. Berating, punishing.
Yep. Yeah. What it is, it's a disconnection. The conflict doesn't lead to connection. When conflict leads to disconnection and punishment, stonewalling, resentment, that's a flag. That's a red flag.
Okay, and you're hitting it on a nail. What I talk about and is shame separates us.
Correct. Shame, you and I were just talking a minute ago. I can't work on your shame, you can't work on mine. But what shame does, it disconnects us from ourselves. So we then unconsciously want our partner to help us get reconnected. And now we're in a free fall. Because they can't heal our shame, because that's inside of us.
Right. And shame shows up for me in fears and judgments. And there's so much fodder of describing shame in Dr. Steve's book, The Shame Factor, and in my book from a personal standpoint about how shame evolves and all the different emotional things that come up. And when we are unaware of them, and the reason I am so against banning shame is when it comes up, our mind gets in this mode and we start projecting it, the fears and judgments and the shame onto others. Projecting meaning we spew it out. We attack, we judge, we project what's going on inside us. And so that is what I think you're talking about. And instead of getting to a place where it's connection and
Right.
there's a partner where it's safe to describe, okay, I am in fear. When you said or did this, it made me feel this way. And there's beautiful conversation and growth. Those are the polar opposites.
Shame, I agree with you, Nadia. Shame is, it's great that it's getting a lot of public exposure and recognition, but I don't want it, sometimes a word gets overused to where it loses its meaning.
Right.
Shame for a lot of men is they don't feel like they're good enough. Bottom line,
Okay.
they're not good enough. They don't feel good enough, or they feel defective. And the same for women. And being aware of that allows you to stay in the present with your partner.
Okay.
And that's a green light, a green flag. A red flag is I'm not aware of it and I assume you're doing it to me, that you're
I see.
causing, when really it's just pre existing. Absolutely. Nadia, when I hear you, whether it be one of my clients, male or female, and they talk about they're dating somebody who hates their ex, I'm like, and what makes you any different? What's going to make you any different? And they look at me like, right, this is just, this is coming towards you. They're talking about their
The
ex-wife, but
self-hate.
no, they're projecting out onto their partner
Right.
what a bad person they are. But eventually you become that bad person
Right.
for them because they don't have the insight to see that they're projecting. And
Right.
it's the projection which just sets the whole house on fire.
You just said it in a nutshell.
It sets the house on fire.
They create they
The
make
very
their
thing they don't want.
partner the evil one, but
Right.
that's
And,
what's really
it,
going on within them.
and so what I talk
And
about
it's
with
sad.
men, they've got to unplug from the past. All this is awareness healing. This is all your personal, but unplugging from the past isn't, women aren't bad. Men aren't bad. But if I got an unresolved conflict with my ex-partner, ex-wife, or ex-girlfriend,
Mhm.
I bring another woman in, she becomes the current face to old issues.
Right.
And it's too much. The other thing I red flag is when there's an argument, Nadia, you talked about it, when it's disproportional to the event. Like the
Right.
event's a 2 and they're an 8. How'd you get to an 8? So Nadia, that is healing art. Understand what, first of all, there's no wrong relationships. There's lessons in them.
Right.
And if you understand the lesson, you're not going to resent the person because that requires you to take responsibility.
Yes.
And if I'm taking responsibility, I'm not blaming you for her. That's on
And
me.
my therapist always tells me, okay,
Hmm.
relationships are opportunities to heal.
Yes.
And
It's
anytime that we are triggered, there's something that has been brought up within us. And it
correct.
is our responsibility to go in on our time to reflect what the opportunity is, to what wound is coming up to heal. And she always says anything anyone does is either an act of love or a cry for love. And so
Interesting. Yeah.
with this big picture of what relationships can serve for us, what they are, single, dating, does another person have that concept of relationships and that self-awareness, that self-acceptance so that the land, the
Hmm.
territory, the foundation can be there to
So
have connection versus separation.
what you just said in a nutshell is that you're coming towards somebody with either your side of the streets clean or it's not. And
Mhm.
and for a lot of people listening here, they want pragmatically, tools. And one of the tools is blaming. But if the person you're dating is maligning and negative about their ex and how horrible they are, that is beyond a red flag. That is a roadblock. And to go around that is at your own peril because you will
Right.
get what they're saying. They're just more unconsciously, that's going to come to you. That's like
And
black storm
and that's
clouds
the
up.
turning point. You're so right.
That is the fork in the road. It's saying, listen,
Okay.
a lot of women will say, listen, you need to resolve your divorce, or you need to get that settled. And I have women that'll meet a guy and he's going through a divorce, but he's not done with it. And I tell her, you're going to get the fallout.
Right.
It's going to spill onto you. You're going to get it. It's inevitable. And I always say that to guys, if you date somebody, or women, date somebody who's going through a divorce, you become their ex-partner unconsciously. You may be supportive, but all that rage is going to go
That's so
someplace.
true.
That's why
Displaced rage.
displaced. So there's 5 things now we're going to go over on
Okay.
pause, on how to really manage this in a way
Okay.
that fe- feeds you. One of them obviously goes, shame is being aware that you don't feel good about yourself. And that's our issue, not their issue. When someone says women make me feel bad or men make me feel bad, no, they don't. You feel bad, and that just triggers it. It was already in you. They didn't put it there. They're just that when you take that away, you have a lot more clarity. And one of the things that's
So in
unplugging from a
general,
trigger.
the first general foundation of why we ignore red
Mm-hmm.
flags.
Number one is that we want to feel like your therapist is saying, we want to feel loved and cared for. There's a honeymoon, and we'll drive past all these road signs. And once we drive past them, then they start to come out. And that's where the relationship takes a turn. Part of that, and one of the things being aware of, are they unplugged from their triggers? Are we unplugged from our triggers? That
Right.
requires us to know what our triggers are, or where our wounds lie.
That's so fascinating because two different experiences, two
Mm-hmm.
different scenarios, and in the first, in a home within,
Mm-hmm.
and not listening to my instincts, what I have learned is the triggers that were coming up, the
Mm-hmm.
instinct. There's untrustworthiness. There's a lot of wreckage in this person's life. There's and my
Mm-hmm.
the side of me that was trying to not be judgmental is good. That's a good side.
That's a
I
great
was trying to
quality.
be supportive and loving and understanding, and that's a good side. However, it's an Achilles heel. And so what you just said about the triggers
Mm-hmm.
is super important, to not ignore the red flags, because when there is triggers of my own fears, my own good instinct, good fears, it goes
Mm-hmm.
into the root chakra, like, which
Yeah.
is not from the heart. And when it's in like this root, this body form, it's like I'll get into self-sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get into this belief I have to earn love. And when a first kind of
Mm-hmm.
disgruntling or tension happened in the stages of dating this person, there was abandonment.
You felt
And
abandoned.
yes, there was a ghosting because I had expressed a fear. And
So
bam, right then and there,
mm-hmm.
I have never permitted any ghosting or anything. I have never been treated like that. Right then
So
and there, like you said, the triggers from childhood, the
everything
fear
comes
of
up.
abandonment, all of that came up.
Well, you know, it's not about right or wrong versus how it's connecting to each other. And when
Right.
someone and when someone ghosts you or ghosts us, there's a reason. And understand the reason will help you not to drink the Kool-Aid. Maybe it's too much, they're overwhelmed, they aren't available like they say they are. There's reasons for their ghosting. Understand the reason.
And
And
so,
hold
yes,
on, more, don't make it about yourself, because they're not going to get any information about that. That's good. You're just going to feel bad. Like, why would
there's
they
a
go?
reason.
Why? It was overwhelming. It was too much. Okay, too much. That's fine.
But it
It's
takes
not
that
too much for me
ability
to
to
read it.
communicate what was going on in them.
Well, I want to go before that. Is you have to ask that question, but not to take it in, we've done something wrong, and we get upset and angry, because that's not going to give you information.
Mhm.
What it does, it kind of confuses your side versus why would that happen? Ask them, like, what was going on? What was happening? And then, then, like you said, then the discussion really opens up,
And that's beautiful.
right?
It's
And
an
they made
opportunity.
opportunity to connect. And as your therapist said, we only get better on how to drive by driving. We only get better at relationships being in relationships. People say, I need to heal and be out of one. There's value to that. But I find that people stay on the sideline for years. That's not healing. That's being defensive. That's being guarded. That's not,
Right.
you're not moving. You're in park and there's no keys in the car. It's not moving. And so when you meet somebody and it's hot and heavy and 6, 8, 9 weeks later, they ghost you, well, clearly this is too much. Or there's something else going on here I don't know about. Those questions open up the door.
And it and
Hmm.
there again, there's no right and wrong here.
Correct.
My um my doing was I went on the other side of the court
Okay, let's talk about that.
where it was what was really going on,
Hmm.
and pulled it out and was understanding and did the work for another.
Okay, you
And
didn't do the
that
work for you. You can't do work for other people. That's the myth.
precisely.
What
And
is
and
that's
that's how
people,
the rest continued. But
right?
there is an example of exactly the opposite. And
It's hard, Nadia. What you just said for us not to think we're helping them or doing the work. That is that's up there with shame. That's up there with shame. Is that destructive?
And I'm being so honest and open here because I'm
Hmm.
trying to help other women or anybody out there to see
Other
how
women.
these original beliefs that we have in our head from trauma, how this way our minds functions so subtly, as Dr. Steve pointed out, with awareness with our
Hmm.
triggers and all those things that came up
Yes.
before the
Hmm.
ghosting, my fears instincts were right on. Then at that point, it
Right.
got me in a mode that was survivalist,
Hmm.
managing the other person's emotions, trying to dive in, and it was past the red flags.
Yeah. Nadia, you said it very well. When we go off sides, the relationship's not going to work.
Mhm.
That it's just the beginning of the end. Because people pleasing is you have to erase yourself in service of them. And there's no more equality or unity or balance. It's completely out of balance. It sounds easy, but it's codependence to me is underrated. It's emotional cancer in relationships. I think the biggest addiction, of course, alcohol is huge, drugs. In relationships, it's codependence. Hands down.
And the
Hands down. Jonathan
and the
Gutman
reason we do it,
is because what you just said, it's about ourselves. There's many reasons why we do it. None of them work. You can't do it. You can't hit the ball over the net, then run over and hit it for him.
but it
We
all
know that.
comes back home to us within.
Oh, yeah, it's all within. And then after that happens a number of times, finally you go say, okay, I need to stop doing this. And that's where the value, and you start healing yourself. And that leads to emotional sobriety and responsiveness, not reaction. If I'm
And
worried about being
awareness.
abandoned, I can't be abandoned by anybody. I abandon myself. I'm the
Right.
one that unplugs for me.
And
And
I
I'm out.
had.
And the last thing I want to say, Nadia, is outsourcing our self esteem is paramount to drinking Drano and wondering why it's not killing them.
Right.
Because you can't outsource your self esteem, and it's the source of anxiety. Outsourcing your self esteem, self acceptance, is how all these red flags work. Because I want you to like
Okay.
me. Well, if I like myself, that's not arrogance, that's humility. What's the difference between someone who likes themselves and someone who doesn't? Humility.
Mhm.
Self acceptance breeds humility. Self defense breeds arrogance. It's
Oh,
that
I love that.
self
Self-acceptance
acceptance
breeds
breeds humility.
humility.
Self denial, blocking breeds arrogance. And
Yes.
women will say to me, I'm like, oh, he's so confident, but he's kind of a dick. I go, yeah, he probably is a dick.
So arrogance is a red flag.
Oh my God. It's bad. It's like on the first date, the person shows up 2 hours late. That would be a red flag. Okay. As is arrogance. Now, sometimes arrogance, it's all in degrees from 0 to 10, but humility is someone who likes themselves.
Mhm.
Because I like the parts of me, I've learned to accept the parts of me I don't really like. I accept them.
Mhm.
So I don't need to make you feel bad so I feel better.
Because we're good within.
Right. I'm telling you, Nadia, modern masculinity, I talk about with men, if they learn humility, a lot of this crisis with the Me Too movement is gone. I'm not saying completely, but it's dramatically reduced.
I
Dramatically.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And listen, there's not one thing that does it all, but that's not, humility goes a long ways because that means responsibility. And I'm thinking about you, how I impact you, and it allows me to apologize and take responsibility.
Mm.
And I don't have ego in it. Like, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I didn't do well. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so edgy with you last night. That's humility. Like,
Wow.
okay, that builds intimacy.
Yes,
I
it
tell
does.
women ask me all the time, what should I look for in a guy? I go, humility. And they look at me like, okay, what is that? That sounds really good, Steve, but like, what does that mean? What that means is they know how to handle the parts of themselves they don't like. So I'm not putting them on you. I'm holding
Y
on to them.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. And there's so many other people who say it
They
much better
know
than
how to
this,
handle the
them,
parts of them.
them they don't like. I'm not worried about the parts that I like. Okay, that's easy. Okay, that's walking downhill. Walking uphill is learning to like the parts of me I'm not really fond of.
Mhm. And when someone isn't, it's all projected out.
Thank you. And Nadia, you know it. You've been there, and you, by the grace of God, you've gotten yourself out of that river of despair, as I have, and that's our healing.
So you've already discussed 2 big reasons why we ignore the red flags.
Mm-hmm.
And one is the lack of awareness of
Yeah.
our shame,
Mm-hmm.
our triggers, and
I would
no
say, go ahead.
humility. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Humility is I don't need you to like me. I've learned to like the parts of me I don't really like. Of course, I want you to like me, but I'm not looking for you to do it. I can come to you and just be with you and not hope you're going to pay my bill because
So
I've already
this is
paid.
more how to not ignore them.
Correct. Because
When
it's
we
all about
have
how.
self-acceptance, okay,
Yeah. When you have, this is, like people say, I want a list of red flags. I'm glad to give it to, but it's the application of your humility that will allow you to read that list.
right,
If you don't have the humility, that list is useless.
right,
I've never
right.
said it quite. Whew, it is useless, and I've driven past that list and at my own peril. And you learn. And if we're really to go further, as painful as it is, that person was a gift.
Yes.
Got us to wake up. Now there are people that refuse to wake up. Okay, maybe in the next life you'll get it. Maybe you'll get that healing later. But I'm telling you, humility, hugging the cactus. I love that term.
Mhm.
Is I have to learn the parts that I'm not the best at myself. So I'm not
Right.
scared to show you because come on, I already, yeah, what do we see? There's no mystery here. I know what's going on about myself, what I do.
And in that place of
Mm-hmm.
that self-awareness, that self-acceptance, that
Humility.
tuning in, the mindfulness and being in that place, I need
Mm-hmm.
to rigorously do that every day. I am able to
Hmm.
voice my limitations, to say what, you know,
Right.
somebody said or did wasn't right,
Or
and
yeah,
do
exactly. You can
right.
you can talk what you're saying now with that allows you guys to really connect deeply,
Yes.
deeply, and that's what we
And that
crave.
is what happened, but the
Hmm.
reciprocity and the honesty and vulnerability wasn't there, and yet in a scenario
Hmm.
where there was absolutely listening to instincts and seeing red flags with another's ability to voice what was going on in them, and me going on in
Hmm.
me, the human connection through
Hmm.
that vulnerability can be beautiful. And it's the polar
Absolutely.
opposite,
Hmm.
but both individuals
Yes.
had to have that awareness and that self honesty. And
I would say
that's the point of relationships.
self honesty. It's not they're being dishonest, but they have insight,
And like
right?
you said before, they know their blind spots.
Yep. And the more you look for your blind spots, you'll find them. Arrogance says I don't have any. Humility says, yeah, I got to watch my blind spots. We all have them. I have them. Maybe where I take on too much responsibility for stuff that isn't mine. That's a blind spot. I have to be mindful of that. Be aware of it. Nadia, being mindful of yourself and what you what you're talking about, you've come through a lot of stuff. And in your book, you talk about what you've overcome and these dramatic events you've found your way through. And then you start dating someone on the other side of this. And what's disappointing, because we had an expectation that it was going to go better. Fair enough. But what the best way for us to go forward in relationships is the more I'm aware of my blind spots, the less I'm going to miss theirs. If I see what I'm doing, it allows me to see what they're doing, and I'm not saying they're doing it to me. It's what they do. There's clarity, and with clarity comes humility, and that's your best insurance policy for intimacy in a relationship. Someone who's humble with you, you're not going to miss much. You may have some misunderstandings, but you're not going to have knockdown, drag out, level 100 fights. You just won't.
No, you won't. I had never experienced it like that before,
Yeah,
ever.
yeah.
And so being aware of our blind spots for
It's
women,
hmm
anybody,
men and women.
are for men and women
Hmm.
that have the blind spot of
Let's not have a blind spot forever.
self-sacrifice,
Yeah, or whatever the reason is, whatever
whatever the reason
reason
is, but
is.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to name a couple. It's like
Hmm.
we're fixers, we're helpers,
Hmm.
we're over understanding, and I mean, name the most common ones we've gone through on different podcast episodes, several
Yeah.
different ones, but I know that mine come from it's trauma based. It's this fear of abandonment, self sacrifice, that I have to earn love, sense of
Hmm.
unworthiness, all these different ways that show up in relationship in the beginning, that we can all be vehemently aware of, so that we do
Yeah.
not ignore the red flags.
If if I'm aware of my blind spots, I'm aware of my red flags. I have no problem seeing theirs and
Right.
dismissing them because I have the same ones. They may look different, but ultimately we all have the same red flags. And with humility, you know that. With arrogance, it's only you. It's your problem, not me. We all,
Exactly.
yeah, that's the key, ladies and gentlemen. We all have the same red flags. And to the degree you know yours, You can't walk past, you can't pretend they're not there.
So let's start in that home within
Go
to
within.
lovingly look at
Hmm.
ourselves and say, what are my blind spots? The more and more that we have that safe, calm place within us where we can
Hmm.
have that unconditional love of whatever our blind spots are. It's there's no bashing, there's no shaming within. It's acceptance, because with that comes empowerment. With that comes, as Dr.
Hmm.
Steve has said, humility coupled with strength.
Humility breeds strength.
Yes.
If you don't have humility, they talk about people want to inherit the kingdom of God and maximize their spiritual life. Start with humility. You're not going to miss much. And you're going to go a long ways in your life. So let's stop there
Okay.
and come back and discuss more about relationships with men and women and the role we play in them.
Got it. Love you, Dr. Steve.
Thank you, Nadia. I love you too. Okay, thanks.
You are not alone. If you are dealing with shame and trauma, please reach out to me through my website, nadia-davis.com. You can get a free Ban Shame tip sheet and find out about upcoming events. I'd love it if you picked up my book, Home is Within You, wherever books are sold. If you like this podcast, please tell a friend, leave a review, and make sure to follow me on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Sending warm hugs.